Hello, football family. Welcome into Huddle It Up Films. Pleased to be joined today by Tony Summer from the Arrowhead guys. Hey, Tony. He's going to give us
Hello.
the Kansas City Chiefs perspective. We're going to trade notes back and forth on what to expect with this game on Sunday night. So, Tony, please, would you just introduce yourself to the people and tell people where they can find your work?
All right, my name is Tony Summer. I'm the owner of Arrowhead Guys. We're a Chiefs blog founded 2019, I think it is. Yeah, so it's been a couple of years now. We just cover Kansas City Chiefs, and I started out. It wasn't originally my blog. I just started out as a contributor, but our original founder, he got a little busy, so he passed it on to me. So now I take on. Now I'm really busy.
There you go.
I say.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good. I always encourage my fans. I'm at Huddle It Up Films for any Chiefs fans that are watching this to follow someone from the opposing team, especially AFC teams, division teams, the week that you guys play. I always find that very helpful. So the Arrowhead guys are my guys, and I'm so glad that Tony decided to join me here on Huddle It Up Films. So, Tony, let's jump into it. The news of the week where I want to start, obviously, for the Ravens, it's not pretty. 15.
The injuries, yeah.
15 players on IR. That is not
It
a
is. Sorry, it's absolutely ridiculous. Like, I've tweeted about it a couple of times now. It's just like, what is going on? You guys have become the Chargers.
Yeah.
Like, it's just insane.
Yeah.
I mean, on the Chiefs end, we don't really have any injuries. Our only really notable injury is Willie Gay, who you guys probably don't know. He's a linebacker. He was our second-round pick a year ago. We've been really hoping and expecting him to become a real starter and a real contributor this year. But he got injured, I think, either in training camp or the preseason. So he didn't play last week. He's not going to play this week. He'll come back eventually, but just not for this week. So you guys don't have to worry about him, which for this game it kind of sucks for us because he's a really athletic linebacker who, against Lamar Jackson, that's kind of an important thing to have. But for us, the nice thing we get back is Tyrann Mathieu, who is our all-pro safety, who we missed last week because he got COVID, even though he was vaccinated. And he's removed from the COVID list the day before the game. So we all thought he was going to play, and then he ended up sitting out. And Cleveland kind of had a good game against our defense, at least in the first 3 quarters or so. So in their first 6 drives, the Browns, their offense, they scored touchdowns on 4 of them. And the 2 that they didn't, one was the end of the first half, and one was kind of a fumble, one of those fluke fumbles that are hard to predict. So for those first 6 drives, they were just doing whatever they wanted against our defense.
Yeah, thanks, Tony.
But then suddenly the defense decided they're wanting to show up. So the last 3 drives, I think the first 2 were 3 and outs, and then the last one ended the game on an interception. So I don't know what they're doing. They should be starting because they have Mathieu back. Frank Clark also missed that game, and he's going to be back. So really the only person we're missing is Willie Gay, and he's maybe the, 3rd or 4th best player on our defense if he reaches our expectations. So as far as injury is concerned, it's definitely in the Chiefs' favor this week.
For sure. And Willie Gay, by the way, is a guy that I really like coming out of the draft. I love the way he flew around, found the football. Definitely a high upside guy. Tyrann Mathieu and Frank Clark speak for themselves. So definitely a healthy Chiefs team. And Tony, the thing is with these 15 players that are IR, you can conservatively say 9, if not more, are starters or huge role players, obviously including J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, Marcus Peters. And then this week, Ronnie Stanley looks like he's going to miss significant time. Our best backup swing tackle in Tyree Phillips, they had playing left guard. Now he's out for the season. So we're really reaching down on the depth chart as far as the offensive line.
Yeah, I was wondering about Tyree Phillips, if you don't mind, because I'm not as familiar with him. So that's very interesting. I saw he started as guard last week. But he's definitely a starter, right? Is he, like, if everybody was healthy, would he be a starter?
He would be. He would be a starter at left guard until Ben Cleveland, our third round pick, is ready to play. Ben Cleveland had a concussion during the preseason, and then he's just, just kind of a rookie thing with Harbaugh. He likes to work them in slowly. Orlando Brown didn't play for the first 8 games when he was here. But my opinion, this is a hot button issue in Baltimore actually with Phillips, because if he was a college tackle, we moved him around from right tackle to right guard last year. Really stunted his development. And like I said, we don't have a lot, tackle depth is hard anyway, as you guys know. So when you're playing your third best tackle, who might be our second best tackle with the way Villanueva played at guard, and he goes down, now all of a sudden we're really scraping the barrel for tackle depth, and it's a huge issue on this team.
And Stanley, he's a really good tackle, but he didn't play very well last week, probably because of injury. And so even if he did play, it's a question of would he really be all that effective? From the Chiefs end, so on the defensive line, we're kind of Frank Clark and Chris Jones are kind of the big names. A lot of Chiefs fans are kind of down on Frank Clark just because of how much we gave up to get him. But Chris Jones is absolutely dominant. So the big story with him is that he moved from the interior of the defensive line to defensive end this offseason. And a lot of people, myself included, were really skeptical about it because we were like, he's so dominant on the interior. Why are you changing what we know works to take this huge risk? But, I guess that's why we're here on YouTube and they're there in the front or in the building because, in the preseason, he looked absolutely dominant. And then he got 2 sacks last week. So that's kind of what's so, exciting for Chiefs fans about it is that whenever we face a team like the Ravens who are kind of struggling on the offensive line, we can say, well, this guy looks weak. Let's put Chris Jones against him. And we can just pick out the weakest link there and just put him against him. And he should be able to dominate the game.
Yeah, and from a Ravens perspective, Chris Jones has given us a lot of problems like he does for other teams. But to have him on that left end versus Villanueva is a scary thought because Villanueva is having some serious problems with his height and the leverage. And you saw Max Crosby was the best player on the field pretty much on Monday night. So I was surprised too. I mean, why mess with a great thing? Chris Jones, all-pro type player. I don't know his stat. If he was an all-pro, he should be in that conversation at least. But it's a huge worry. And from a strategical standpoint, Tony, this is something I may want to throw by you. I've been a proponent now with Villanueva struggling and having a dominant player like Chris Jones on that left defensive edge to go back to kind of like the traditional read option where you just basically take some pressure off of Villanueva and kind of freeze Chris Jones in his shoes and see if the big man can chase Lamar around that edge. Just put your Ravens hat on for a second. Would you think that would be a fair assessment from my end?
I think that's a good idea. I mean, it makes a lot of sense because you're right. That's an easy way to neutralize a player, right? And, Chris Jones is athletic for his size, but he's still not a speed guy. So if you're isolating him like that, he's probably not going to be able to go down and chase down Lamar Jackson. Right. So I'd say that's probably a pretty good game plan. I don't want to be surprised if the Ravens tried that. Because you're right. He's, like I said, Frank Clark is not as dominant as Chris Jones is. And so if you're wanting to kind of to take away one of our defensive linemen, it's definitely Chris Jones, and that's definitely the way to do it. The problem there is, well, we've kind of technically moved him to the edge. He's still open to playing on the interior, so it's kind of hard to plan for him that way. Because if you're saying, okay, we're going to make him the what is that man called on the option plays, like the isolation man or whatever. If you try and make him on that play, he might not be lining up there. So he might end up being, well, I'm running right into him.
So, Tony, do you think they mix it up down to down, or is he pretty much like an inside sub-rusher? Like, is it passing downs when Jones moves to the inside?
I don't know. That's a good question. I haven't really followed it, but I assume what I saw is that last week he played mostly on the edge. But during the preseason, they did move him around. So I think their plan is we're just going to put him where we think is going to be best. And so I wouldn't be surprised if during any individual game they move him around as well.
Yeah, and I just wanted to address one more thing on the O line, Ravens O line versus Chiefs D line. You mentioned Stanley in passing. He wasn't right, man. Like his movement
Mhm.
skills are his strength, and it wasn't there. And now he's questionable. It seems like he's going to be missing a good chunk of time until he gets right. So, yeah, we're really the Ravens are really in a pinch there. What do you think about the Ravens run game versus the Chiefs defense? How does the Chiefs run defense look to you? Are there any areas for the Ravens? Of course, they had 199 yards on the ground versus the Raiders, which is pretty typical for the Ravens, but missing Gus and JK is a huge deal. So, talk to me about that KC run defense, please.
I mean, historically, the run defense has not been really very good the last couple of years. I mean, it is what it is. But I think, I'm more of an analytics guy. So the way I think about it is the Ravens have a really, really good run offense. But they're going to have to score some points. Like if you watch that game against the Raiders, that's not going to cut it because the Chiefs. The reality is the Ravens need to get at least to 30 points if they want to win, and it's just going to be really, really difficult to do that by trying to run it. And so to me, this game is one where this is a game where Lamar Jackson has to be able to go out there and throw the ball. And I know a lot of Chiefs fans, and I sometimes join in the fun as well, like to make Lamar Jackson running back jokes. But, I mean, he's really not that bad of a passer, I don't think.
No.
I mean, there's certainly worse, even if you took away his running ability, there's a lot of quarterbacks out there that are worse than him. So I don't think it's impossible for him to go out there and, dominate. I think the bigger problem is just the injuries that just, the way I look at this game is just overall, if the Ravens win this game, this is going to be far and away the best win of Lamar Jackson's career. It would be, that's what it's going to require is a career game from him. Like this is the game where, looking back, you're saying this is a game where he really shined.
Yeah. No, it's a one man show at this point, and you saw against the Raiders game. I mean, Lamar Jackson makes some terrific throws, and it happens every week. People, I mean, Tony, being a film guy and studying this, I have plenty of videos on this on my channel. But Lamar Jackson can throw, not just passably. Lamar Jackson reads defenses. You would understand this as an analytics guy. All the Ravens basically see is zone defenses because you don't want to turn your back on Lamar. So this is a man that's come into the league and being able to read zone defenses. You see his touchdown to interception ratio. We just don't have Tyree Hill over here and some of the weapons, of the other places. But Lamar, with a Greg Roman offense, you've seen the Greg Roman great running games, terrible passing games over the year. Believe me, Lamar Jackson can throw. It's just a lot of pressure on him in this offense. Ton of it.
I mean, it's just like, let's see. I have the injury report up here just to reference it because it's so many. Marquise Brown is questionable.
Yep.
I couldn't, I don't know if he's expected to play or not, but that's not good. You're down.
Bateman's out for the year too, and that's not on that. Bateman's out not for the year, but for this game.
I mean, from the Chiefs fans' perspective, it's super ironic that Sammy Watkins is your healthiest receiver.
Right. Yeah.
Because we're actually really missing him now, because the big controversy for us is that number 2 wide receiver, which is our third passing option. Which I think to me, maybe I'm an optimist, but I'm kind of like, if your biggest complaint is the third receiving target, you're in pretty good shape there. So, obviously we have Tyreek Hill. Obviously Travis Kelce is, catches passes like a topper receiver. But then after that, we don't have a whole lot because Sammy Watkins was there before, and when he played, he was really effective. But the question is, who's going to step up? There's really the two main contenders are Mecole Hardman and Demarcus Robinson, and neither one have really shown a whole lot. So on that end, the what you have to try and do is stop Kelsey and stop Hill, and then hope the other two guys can beat you. But if you don't have, if Humphrey is beat up, even if he plays, is he going to be 100%? You don't have Peters. So it's just like, I don't want to come onto your channel and like be like pumping up the Chiefs and saying how we're going to win or whatever. But it's really just such a difficult situation with the injuries.
It is, and I'm going to add to your point there, Tony. Jimmy Smith, longtime Raven, you probably know he's a very good player. He's also questionable, missed last week. And then we had this young man, Chris Westry, who is a big corner, 6'4", 4'3" type guy who played really well in that game. He's now out on injured reserve. So we're down to Anthony Averitt, who is a speed guy. Like, we matched him up on Hardman last year and in years past, and he does well with those type of receivers, a fast guy. Not the total route runner, but Anthony Averitt can hang. The problem is Marcus Peters was an every down corner that you could stick on whoever was on his side. He was going to do a good job. He was going to give up his big plays, but he was also going to intercept the ball. And you know Peters well, of course, from his Kansas City days. So not having Peters, not having Jimmy Smith, not having Westry, I mean, it's going to be
maybe not having Humphrey. I mean, it's just like, already, the Ravens have struggled to beat the Chiefs the last couple of years with Mahomes, but now this is going to be the toughest matchup yet for the Ravens.
It is. So I wanted to ask you, now I know being an analytics guy, you tend to minimize the running backs, the inside linebackers, the running game. Yeah. I know how you guys roll, but yeah, just joking with you. But how about the Chiefs running game? Is there any concern in Kansas City that there needs to be more balance, or are you guys just pretty happy with how the offense is going and say, hey, it's gotten us 2 straight Super Bowls?
I mean, there's always people who think everything, but I'll tell you my perspective is that I don't really care. To me, it's like, as long as, to me, I mean, my perspective is you should throw it way more than what they currently do. That running plays should almost be situational, where it's an obvious running play, trying to run out the clock at the end of the game, 3rd and 1, that kind of thing, or just enough to keep them honest. Because passing is so much more efficient. And I think it's especially true when you have Mahomes. Like, to me, it drives me crazy when we run the ball on 1st and 1 or on 1st and 10 or 2nd and 10. Like, what are you doing? Why are you taking the ball out of Mahomes' hands? Like, every time you do that, the other team must be overjoyed. Why are you helping them out? So to me, it's like the running game is just not really going to be the deciding factor. But to actually, I would say there are a couple of things worth talking about with it. One is we spent that 1st round pick on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and his rookie year, he was pretty good, but I mean, not quite as good as we wanted for a 1st round pick. And then last week he didn't. I mean, it's okay, but not really 1st round pick worthy. The bigger thing is our new offensive line with Orlando Brown. Obviously, you guys are familiar with him. Joe Thuney from the Patriots. We signed him. We gave him a big contract. He's at guard. And then our 3 rookies. Center Creed Humphrey, our 2nd round pick. We're really excited about him. The biggest, believe it or not, our biggest hype on the offensive line is probably Trey Smith at guard. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he was a 6th round pick. He's kind of a shock. People were shocked that he dropped down to the 6th round, but it was because he had blood clots, and we were concerned with that. But he's come in and he's been just dominating. I mean, it's really unbelievable. I mean, I've never seen so many highlights for a guard before. So, like on Twitter, people are like, "Oh my gosh, look at Trey Smith doing this. Like, more than even Mahomes, really. It's amazing." And then at right tackle is Lucas Niang, who is technically a rookie because he was drafted last year, but he sat out. The COVID thing where he opted to sit out. So he's technically a rookie this year. So we have those 3 rookies. And so we're really hoping our offensive line is a lot better than last year. And I mean, it doesn't have to be very good to be better than what it was in the Super Bowl. And I think that is really going to have the biggest impact on the running game.
Okay.
I'm an analytics guy, so my opinion is the biggest impact on the running game is the offensive line. That really the running back doesn't matter as much as the guys in front of him. And we're hoping the guys in front of him are a whole lot better than they were last year.
Yeah.
As far as what that affects, a lot of people I've heard of the complaint is the red zone and these like 3rd and short, 4th and short. Is that we've, at least last year, we really struggled to just hand the ball off, get that 1 yard, get that 2 yards, be able to, you have 1st and goal on the 3, just run it until you get in. We really struggled with that, and people complain that we're too cute. That I can't remember. We do it so often that I don't remember if we did it against the Ravens or not. But I'm sure we have, where we ran these crazy trick plays on the goal line, where they're spinning around and doing these crazy screens. Last week we did a screen to an offensive lineman. Like, it's crazy, and people are like, these are kind of cool when they work, but why can't we just, we invested so much in this offensive line, why can't we just hand it off and let the offensive lineman work? And so that's really the big concern for us the focus for us is not having to rely on the Andy Reid tricky play thing so much and just be able to run the ball when we need to, even when analytics say you need to.
Well, hey, Trey Smith, I'm very familiar. I'm a draft nerd. Just a big, big guy. Old-fashioned guard, right guard, for Ravens fans who don't know. And then Creed Humphrey, one of my favorite players, a guy I was looking at to maybe take over center for the Ravens and leave Bradley Bozeman as that guard, which he did so well at left guard. So I'm very familiar with those two. Lucas Niang, it's been a couple of years, wasn't known, didn't know what to expect from him. But when I see from a Ravens perspective in that you're going to have a hard time running on this team, even without Derek Wolfe, another one of the guys that I mentioned that's out. So you have Calais Campbell, Justin Matabike, Brandon Williams. I'm sure your viewers, Justin Ellis, are very familiar with some of those players. It's a big veteran group that guys like Creed Humphrey are going to have a hard time moving. But yeah, just also I wanted to ask you about this. Now, when I looked at Niang and I looked at Orlando Brown, now I know Orlando Brown, and most of us do very well. The set point where Mahomes sets up is completely different from where Lamar does in the pistol. And we saw that edge get burnt big time against Orlando Brown Jr. Are you concerned, or are Chiefs concerned, that where Mahomes sets up is just too far for big Orlando to reach over there?
Yeah, there's a little concern. I mean, Brown did struggle a little bit last week. I mean, I saw this stat that he gave up more pressures in that one game than he did in, what was it, either the entire year last year or in his entire career before that. But so, yeah, I mean, that's a concern. But I think it's just something where our line is really young. We have 3 rookies, Brown and Thuney. They're all brand new. They're trying to get working with each other. They're new to Mahomes. And so I think it's just one of those things where, yeah, that's going to happen. It'll probably happen a couple of times in this game where, they're just not all on the same page.
Yeah.
But I think for us, we're kind of at the point where it's like, we know we're making the playoffs. And, given the way the AFC is, I don't really think it's much of a concern. We're probably going to get the 1 seed as well. So if they struggle a little bit early, that's fine, as long as they get it together by the playoffs. So I think that's it. That's not a big enough deal where we're really panicking over it. But yeah, I think that is definitely something that is something to watch and something that will impact probably this game and probably the first couple of weeks of the season.
Yeah, it's just something as a Ravens fan and analyst I wanted to point out to you as like a context clue or something to keep an eye on, because Orlando's fantastic when he's put in the right position. He really is, but you could see, like, from someone who studied Orlando since he came into the league, where Mahomes is set up is not a spot where he usually is capable of blocking because he's such a big man. Orlando is also, by the way, famous for starting slow and needing some time to get into football shape. So that is something that,
really?
Yeah, I mean, look at the
I haven't heard that actually, so that's interesting. Because the game I watched of him was against. Oh, it was that game against the Browns? Wasn't that last year? The Lamar Jackson cramps game, where yeah, I think that was the game I watched of him, and he was because I wanted to see him against Myles Garrett since Garrett's so good, and he, I think Garrett got him once, but really overall Brown was really really good against him.
He is really good, but again, that has to do with Lamar setting up in the pistol and not taking deep drops. Like
that game was later in the season, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like week 14 to 15. But go back and look if you want to compare and contrast. We played the Browns week 1 last year. Orlando working his way into shape has been a thing. If you look at his grades, they get better as the year goes on. And think about the combine as well, where it's off season. Him getting in shape, being self-motivated may be a factor. I don't want to talk bad about a Baltimore kid. I mean, he grew up in Baltimore too. His dad played for the Ravens, so Orlando, prayers up to him. I love him. But as far as working into shape, just a context clue I wanted to give you. And, when you're talking about Justin Houston and Adafio Way burning the edge, it could be something that the Ravens can take advantage of, even though, of course, Mahomes is so mobile and has such a great feel in the pocket and can avoid those kind of rushes. So.
And that's actually something, maybe not so much recently, but back when we first kind of started, when I was doing power rankings, I was kind of actually known as a Ravens hater. Because back in 2019, when you guys were just like blowing out everybody and you went 14-2, during my power rankings, I was like, I'm not so sure these guys are quite as good as everybody thinks. And I still had the Chiefs #1, even though we were 6-4 at one point. And so at that point, the Ravens must have been 8-2 or 9-1 or something.
Yeah,
like that.
we lost our 2 early.
9-1 must have been because they.
No, we lost our 2 early and then ran the rest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So it was 8 and So, but I still had the Chiefs ranked #1, and people were just like, "Man, you're a giant homer. You just really hate the Ravens." I'm like, no, I really do think that the Chiefs are a better team right now. And I think that season ended up proving to be correct since the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. And then going into this year, a lot of people had the Ravens ranked, top 10, top 5. I kind of had them as average. And I think that's kind of where people have them now after they lost to the Raiders. But actually, that's a game where I was like, I really do think this is kind of a 50-50 game in my mind. I really could see the Raiders winning. The only reason I would have picked the Raiders straight up if they had the same offensive line as last year. So the problem with the Ravens is that, like I said, I'm an analytics guy, so get ready for some numbers. I looked at drives that start on your own 30 or worse. So, kind of, I want not necessarily bad field position, but a kickoff in the back of the end zone is your own 25. So that would count in this. So basically, you need 70 yards or more for a touchdown. And so I looked at those and I said, when you start in that field position, how often do you go 70 yards down the field? And so do you understand what I'm saying? It's kind of a little bit convoluted, but
yeah, I mean, I know we're the #1 scoring team over the last 2 years. So
yes.
however you want to frame your stats is fine. I mean, we're #1 over the last 2 years.
No,
so.
I mean, let me get there. Okay, you're a little ahead of me. So, but do you understand what I'm saying with this? So it's kind of a measure of what your ability to put together long drives, right?
Yes.
So if you had to guess, where would they rank 1 to 32? Where would you put them? Last year,
the COVID year, yeah, I would say probably middle of the pack.
Yeah, they were 22nd, I think. So quite a little bit below, not the worst, but quite a bit below average. But the thing is, they do score quite a lot. Like you said, they're #1. Were they the #1 scoring team last year?
Not last year, over the last 2 years.
Okay, last year they were still scoring a lot of points.
Right.
So the question is, if they're not, why? What's the answer to this contradiction, right? You would think if they're so good on offense, they'd be able to put together long drives consistently. But if they're as bad as this says, how are they putting up all these points? And so my explanation was, for whatever reason, since the Ravens have such a unique offense, what I think is they're above average in converting short fields into touchdowns, right? So I didn't actually do the numbers on this, which I probably should, but I would guess if you did it for if you start inside your opponent's territory, how often do you score touchdowns? And I would bet the Ravens would be near the top in that list.
Yeah.
So they're really, really good at converting those short fields into but they're not so good at converting longer fields into touchdowns.
Gotcha.
So the way the Ravens kind of work is they get their defense to kind of get 3-and-outs or turnovers or whatever. So, a turnover gives you a short field, or if you get a 3-and-out and they punt, usually you get not a really short field, but a pretty short field. And so then they use that to score touchdowns. And, against teams where it works, it really, really works. So you end up, just crushing these people. But that's kind of why they ended up struggling. Like in that Tennessee game, the playoff game a couple years ago, that's kind of why they shockingly lost, is because even though Tennessee didn't really have a dominant offense, it was good enough where they could drive down the field and pin the Ravens back a little bit. Okay. And so I think that's also why, in addition to the Chiefs just being really good, why they've struggled so much against the Chiefs, because the Chiefs will drive down the field and score touchdowns and then kick it out of the back of the end zone, so you're starting on your own 25. And so the Ravens just kind of struggle out of that position. They're not getting the short fields. And I think that's really where these injuries hurt, because, especially Peters, because he's such a turnover machine that without him, he generates so many turnovers that really just fuels that machine.
Yeah. And then the other thing, Tony, I think is relevant to the Chiefs in particular, is that all the blitzes that the Ravens send, that's something that Mahomes is especially good at. So, we catch some of these other quarterbacks who aren't quite as magical as Mahomes, and we can sack them and rattle them, but Mahomes has that way of drifting back. I mean, if you look at the Ravens game last year, Mahomes made some perfect throws, one against Humphrey, one against Peters, where the ball I don't know what your stats said on that, but it was the expected completion percentage must have been way down because it was back of the end zone, man, like toe taps. It was just a beautiful play. So that's something that I'm looking forward to as a Ravens fan, is can we get pressure on Mahomes with 4 men to be able to keep our 7 best guys in coverage?
I actually have stats on that as well.
Go for it.
So I mentioned this in my week 1 power rankings is no, not the power ranks. It was in my season previews for the divisional preview for the AFC North. Where I kind of pointed out the Ravens defense. If you look at 2019, the Ravens defense was really, really good. They blitzed just an unbelievable amount. I think it was like 55%, and nobody else was even above 40%. But they really didn't get a ton of pressures for those. So they were, I should have the numbers, but they were something like 7th in pressures. So still good, but considering how much you're blitzing, it's kind of, your blitz rank is so much higher than your pressure rate.
Right.
And so my kind of thought was, back then, the secondary was so good that, even though you're blitzing, the secondary is able to hold up, and then they're able to take advantage. Marcus Peters gets all those picks. Mm-hmm. So then last year, you blitzed a little bit. You're still number 1 in blitz percentage, but it was quite a bit less. But the funny thing is, if you use net yards per attempt, the Ravens defense was nearly identical in 2019 and 2020. So what that tells me is they blitz less, they get kind of same amount of pressure, so their pass rush improved a little bit, but their secondary wasn't quite as good without Earl Thomas. And so it kind of all balanced out, and you ended up with kind of an equal pass defense. So that's kind of my concern here. My concern going into the year was you lose Judon, who's the big one, and Ngakoue, even though he didn't play the entire season, he's still an effective pass rusher when he was on the Ravens. And so my concern is the pass rush isn't going to be there the same way it was before. And so that pressure rate goes down. So you're going to lean on your secondary. And now with the injuries, you can't really rely on your secondary either. So my concern with the Ravens is that it's just all going to collapse out below you. And if my little stat about converting long drives is true, then that makes it even worse, because when your defense can't stop anybody, you're going to get worse field position, and you're putting your offense in a position where they're built for short fields. They're not built for long fields. And so that's kind of my big concern with the Ravens, is that it could really just all drop out. Everything could just fall apart.
Well, look, hey, that's definitely your opinion. The built for long fields or built for short fields. I mean, it all depends on how you look at it. I will say this though: when you talk about those raw black and white pressure numbers, you're talking about how many seconds and how many yards they are away from the quarterback. Let me tell you, these quarterbacks panic and get rid of it before the rushers within your schedules analytically. So you have a lot of bad throws without pressure, is what I'm saying.
And to be clear, like, these numbers are not like. I think it's important for people to understand when they hear about analytics is that you got to understand that numbers are not perfect. That there's all sorts of every single number you see has some sort of limitation to it. And so it's important to understand those limitations and not take them as 100% sent from God.
Right.
So yeah, it's true that the pressure is not a perfect. Just counting pressures on a stat sheet is not going to give you the full picture. But my argument is it does give you some picture. Like, you can't go to the other extreme and completely dismiss them.
Right.
But I understand. So that's why I'm not going to come out here and say like, oh, the Ravens are going to be terrible this year. I'm not going to like plant my flag there. But I am just going to raise a red flag and say, it's something to be concerned about. Don't be surprised if it does happen.
Agreed. And with Judon and Yannick being gone, Judon led the team last year with just 6 sacks. So it's not in our DNA. You mentioned all the blitz rates. We like to drop our pass rushers in coverage and bring safeties. You look at the Patrick Queen sacks, the Deshaun Elliott sacks. So it's just our style. But to your point, Tony, it's something that we're going to have to switch up now, because we can't play all this cover zero without Marcus Peters, Jimmy Smith, the cornerbacks that we had. Part of what made that scheme work so well for us and had us in the top 5 in defense the last 2 years is, had a lot to do with the cornerback play and being able to trust those guys to hold up for 2.5 seconds before a safety or a corner was getting home. So it's a definite concern. I just, I just wanted to, there's some stark differences between how the Ravens play and how the rest of the teams play. So when you try to put some of the analytics, like a friend of mine did a running the ball on first down, where it's basically useless for 31 other teams. But when you have Lamar Jackson and J.K. Dobbins and Gus, it's a different story. Like, the numbers are just completely flipped. So when the people say the Ravens are zigging when everybody else is zagging, there is something to do with that. And if you look at it, if you don't really, really dig in, you can get the wrong picture. But Tony, there's no way to sugarcoat these injuries and how it's affecting the way we're going to have to play ball, bro. We're going to have to switch it up and really get out of our comfort zone, which is not good news, especially for this week with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs coming to town. It's something, hopefully, from a Ravens perspective, Tony, we don't play our division games till very late in the year. So we have time to get these players back and to redefine ourselves. But it's going to be tough this week. So, Tony, as we wrap
one thing, if you don't mind, really quick.
Sure, go ahead.
Since that's kind of negative on the Ravens, I want to say something positive, since it's a Ravens show. In my AFC North preview, I actually was down on the entire division. And so, in my mind, as much concern as I have, as much as a lot of Ravens fans are probably panicking over the injuries and losing to the Raiders, I don't think it's over yet at all in the division. Like, I would not be shocked at all if you guys won it, especially what you said, all of the people come back from injuries. I don't see why you guys are not contenders in the AFC North, because I don't think the Browns are as good as people think. The Steelers looked nice against the Bills, but the Bills struggled against them last year too. I don't think the Steelers are going to be able to keep that up. And then the Bengals are still terrible. So if you guys get players back and you're able to, play well again, I don't see why you can't win the division.
Yeah, so it's a lot of panic over here, as rightfully so, because expectations are high. But I wanted to ask you just to wrap up, like, what are you looking for in this game schematically? Let's say, this is what would you like to see as a Chiefs fan? What would you like to see the Chiefs do against the Ravens? How to attack this game?
I don't even know a schematic. To me, it's very simple. I want to see Mahomes this should be a game, given the injuries, where, I want to see the offensive line dominate. Really. That's kind of what I want to see, because that's really the key for us, not just this season, but long term. And so this is a game where they should dominate. And if they dominate, Mahomes should go out. He should have a game where he goes out. He has more touchdowns than incompletions, throws 6 touchdowns, 350 yards. That's kind of, that's a game that would make me happy. He should be able to take advantage of the situation. To me, the concern would be if it is like last week, where the team kind of doesn't look like they're really in it, or they're really not up for it. Really, the defense, especially after last week, where they struggled so much those first 6 drives. If they can't stop a depleted Ravens team, then we got to start asking serious questions about the defense. So to me, it's more of those big picture things that the Chiefs are favored by 3.5, 4. I think it depends where you look. And again, I don't want to be too negative about the Ravens, but given the injury situation, I'm just shocked that number hasn't risen. That to me, if given the situation, again, I don't want to be coming off as some like egotistical Chiefs fan who's just a big homer. This is definitely, given the injury situation, that the Chiefs should absolutely dominate this game. And if they don't, Ravens fans should be very happy, even if it's a close loss.
Thank you very much.
Because if you guys are in it till the end, that gives you're thinking, well, what happens if we meet in the playoffs when, suddenly we have all our players back, and, the way the season goes, we'll probably lose a couple players in injuries. It's just the way it goes. If it's close game at the end and the Chiefs barely pull it out like they did against Cleveland, if I'm a Ravens fan, I definitely take that, given the situation.
Yeah, and from our perspective over here, Tony, I just want us to play well, and I would like to, it's going to be a ton of pressure on Lamar. I want to see Lamar do his thing and be as comfortable as possible. Whatever the offense has to do to protect him, if you give Lamar protection, he's going to burn you either with his legs or his arm. You saw the way he buys time and is able to dissect defenses. One of the misnomers is Lamar's a one-read quarterback and go. I mean, that couldn't be further from the truth. We just have problems getting people open, and a great Roman passing scheme, which is historically struggled, let's just say, to put it nicely. So if you can get Lamar time, the pathway for the Ravens to win this game is to capitalize on those 2 or 3 balls that Mahomes is going to loft up there. To capitalize on that, have good eyes, and to come back with a turnover, and then to protect Lamar enough to where he can just take over the game like we've seen him, like he did in that Tennessee game playoffs last year, where it was just the Lamar Jackson show, and without him, we would have been in big trouble. So, but Tony,
one last thing, for my mind, for the Ravens, given that this is a game where Lamar is going to have to pass, and he's going to have to pass a lot and score a lot, if I'm looking at this game, I want to see him go out there and show that he is a real quarterback. Like you said, I've watched some film on him, and he's shown flashes of it. Really, he has.
No, he's a real quarterback, Tony. I mean, if you're even saying that,
but he needs to have it. This is the game where he needs to put it all together, like that Browns game last year, where this was a legitimate game where he put up tons of points. He needs to have a game like that, and if I'm a Ravens fan, that's what I'm looking for. That he absolutely can go out there, go toe to toe with Mahomes, even though Mahomes has all the advantages in the world. If he goes out there, has a dominant game. That's what I would want.
All right, awesome. Well, look, I'm not going to sit here and defend Lamar Jackson from show he's a quarterback. I mean, if you don't know that by now, then obviously, you're not watching the Ravens very closely, and you're stuck in that Stephen A. Smith narrative. So, yeah, he doesn't have anything to prove. He doesn't have anything to prove as far as being a quarterback. As far as being able to win a game with his arm, we've seen it. Being able to slay defenses, we've seen perfect quarterback ratings. And it's not all due to his legs. We're talking about tight window throws. He said, feel free, any Chiefs fan, to do your research on my channel. I have plenty of Lamar stuff there. So, but for this game in particular, Tony, he's going to have to carry it. I mean, he's going to have to carry us because there's no help anywhere else. And of course, like you said with Mahomes, he's going to put up his points no matter how good your defense is. So Lamar, the one thing I will agree with you there is he's going to have to go toe to toe and put up points when it counts and not just in garbage time. So, yeah. But
if the Ravens win this game, I don't think there's going to be many Chiefs fans that are going to talk smack about him for very long. I don't think.
Hey, I welcome the smack. For me. Like, it's kind of like if you told me I'm a bad dad, like I just laugh at you because I know I'm a great dad. You know what I mean? If you told me I was not such a good football player, I might get my defenses up because, I couldn't make it at College Park. So, I'm a high school player, so that's about it.
I mean, I was on my 8th grade B team, so that's my football playing experience.
Hey, there we go, man. We got a match between us there, Tony. We got a match between us there, man.
That's right.
But hey, brother, look, I wanted just to thank you so much for coming on.
This was awesome.
We never worked together before, so I was a little hesitant. How's it going to work? But I really like hearing that Chiefs confidence. I wanted to get the KC view of this game. For us, I'm just looking for us to stay healthy, to play well, to give us some glimmer of hope, to get fans back on board. And, I kind of like it from a Ravens perspective because it feels like there's nothing to lose. Like, if we lose this game, there's every reason to be like, yeah, of course. But if the Ravens were to win this game at home in the home opener, then all of a sudden it really flips things. Not so much from a Chiefs perspective. You guys are going to be fine no matter what. But from our perspective, it'd be like a great win,
I mean, it'd be nice if we saw each other again in the playoffs where, you guys actually had your team.
Yeah.
And we could have a real game. Well, maybe it will be a real game, and then, be great for the Ravens if it was.
It would, Tony. But thank you so much, brother. Can you tell people once again where they can find your work? And I'll post it down in the video description.
Yep. So we're at arrowheadguys.com. Very easy. So, come check us out. We're very much a conversation-oriented blog. So sign up, join the account, join the conversation.
Tony, thanks so much, brother. Say goodbye to the people.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me on. See you, everybody.